Welcome to Hot Topics. In this video, we're going to be discussing what's the difference between the working clearances in Table 110.26A1 and the approach boundaries of 130.4 that we will look at. I think it's 130.4 F through G, around page 25 of 70E. But now, this was a two-part question, and the submitter wanted to know if the 5-foot maximum of your table 110.26A1 on page 50, could that be used to default to the arc flash boundary? And of course, you should know by now the answer is no, you shouldn't do that. But now, reviewing the table 110.26A1 on page 50, there are three levels of voltage to ground that we need to know. First is 0 to 150, first column to the left of the table. It's 3 foot for condition 1. Now remember, condition 1 is when there's an insulated wall behind your back. Condition 2 is when there's a grounded wall behind your back. And condition 3 is when equipment is opposite equipment and you're standing in the middle of the equipment, maybe servicing it in some way. And notice all that's 3 foot as long as you're 150 volts to ground, 122.40, 122.08, etc. The next level of current is 151 to 600 volts. That picks up your 277 and 480. Condition 1, 3 foot. Condition 2, 3 foot 7 inches. And condition 3, 4 foot. Now 601 to 1000 volt, maybe that might deal with some wind generating system, generators, PV systems, those fuel cell systems, those kind of systems. Notice that it might be 3 foot for condition 1, 4 foot for condition 2, then that's where the 5 foot in condition 3 comes from, that the question was asked, could we just use that as a default value of 5 foot and consider that the arc flash boundary, and we would need PPE on if we crossed it. And based upon the calculation in the Annex D, as in dog, to determine arc flash boundaries, the whole room may be an arc flash boundary. It may be 10 foot, 12 foot, etc. So no, this is just working clearances. And 205.5 of 70E on page 42 reference the user of 70E to the NEC 110.26 for work clearances. And those clearances is in line with OSHA 1910-302 through 1910-308, when everything's totally enclosed. There's no opening at 50 volts or more that you could get into and get shocked in some way by touching an energized component, part, conductor, etc. Now, these conditions that you see in the illustration are below table 110.26A1 on page 50. Now, what it's basically saying when we look at this next illustration, notice the person standing there doing some switching. Notice that 3 foot in the grayscaled area, 3 foot out, is the minimum that we would have in OSHA and the table S-1 in the section. They say the same thing, really. 3 foot is your minimum. And then notice, as an installer, electrician, you want to make sure that there's not a wall behind that person's back. Remember, condition 1, insulated wall. Condition 2, grounded wall. Condition 3, equipment opposite equipment. Now, Notice above the equipment up to 6 foot is a dedicated space area. No foreign piping of anything can be in that area. However, a suspended ceiling could be there, as you see. Sprinkler head could be in that room. Air conditioning, as long as it's associated with that room, see. So we kind of pick up those rules. Now the next rule is your headroom. It's 6.5 foot minimum, or the height of the equipment, whichever's greater. In this illustration, the equipment height is greater. So we would acknowledge that. And then, of course, you have your transformer sections that you look at in 450.13 and 450.21. 1,000 volt or less equipment and equipment over 1,000 volt. Those sections are listed there in a loop for you to look at. Plus your dedicated clearances, 110.26 is an ed, which is above the illustration. But now, this is working clearances, 1910-302 through 1910-308 of OSHA, and of course the NEC 110.26A1, basically for 1,000 volts or less, and over 1,000 volts, then naturally 110.34A. Now, the next illustration that we want to look at now would be the approach boundaries that we would need to review. And so that would be our next illustration. Now you notice we have the arc flash boundary that you see to the right of the illustration up toward the top. And the arc flash boundary is 130.5A on page 25 of 70E. And once you cross that boundary, you need your PPE on if you're going to remove covers, do switching of devices that hadn't been properly maintained by NFPA 70B in accordance with 70E 200.1, the informational note. Now, the limited approach boundary, then notice we pick up the limited approach boundary, and we pick that up in 130.4 of the, I believe it's G and F, that we would pick up the limit and the restrictive. But notice once you cross that arc flash boundary, now you can calculate that in the Annex D. If you really want to go through the calculations and a selection of PPE, just look at our video selecting PPE, and it'll set you on the right path there. Now, once that's crossed, and you're going to remove covers, gain access into the energized components, and so forth, you cross it, you stand in that limited approach boundary, you extend the insulated arm with an insulated tool, and you cross into the restrictive approach boundary to the point of the energized electrical conductor or circuit part, as you see in our illustration. And once you calculate that arc flash boundary, as I previously quoted, it may be a whole room. It may be a room of 20 foot. And once you unlock the door and walk in, you need your PPE on if you're going to remove covers and do switching on devices that haven't been maintained properly in the normal operating condition. You would need to wear your PPE. But now if you're just walking in, opening the door, and you're qualified to do that, you've been designated as a person that's competent and qualified to do that. Once you approach the equipment just to take say a meter reading, an instrument reading, or passing through the arc flash boundary area, well, that's okay. We can do that. We know 70E gives us permission to do that. Now, if you want to know more information about these approach boundaries, what's allowed in those boundaries, go to the Annex C, and I believe that's on page 60 of the NE70E, that you want to pick that up. Now, notice this person has set up the barricade there because he's crossed it, and he's in the limited approach boundary, extending the insulated arm, as you see in the illustration, into an area with an insulated tool. it's highly recommended that you don't touch energized components and circuits and so forth with insulated gloves. Now, I know sometimes the facility takes a management risk thing and allows us to do that, but you need to check on that and see how you would want to comply with that rule. Now, notice the balaclava, the hood, those requirements are in 130.7C 10B1 on page 32. And notice this individual has that insulated hood on because they're in that limited approach boundary with the back of the head that where an arc develops, it could roll up and, burn the neck in some manner. So we know this person shouldn't get more than a second-degree burn. That's what the code looks for. Now, we also can go into, I believe it's 130.7C15 on page 33 of 70E. And it says if you do not want to calculate the calories per centimeter squared using the Annex D, then in lieu of doing that, that section says you can go through the 3 tables that we explain those tables in detail if you take time to review our video selecting PPE. We kind of go through that with you. Now, you pretty well have it. The differences and the working clearances of table 110.26A1 and the arc flash boundaries and approach boundaries of 130.4 G through F, I believe it is, somewhere in there. I better maybe give you a little bit better reference than that. I believe it's 130.4 G through F that you would need to look at. But I know it's on page 25 that you can review that. And then go to 130.5 for the arc flash boundary rules. And my name is James Gray Stallcup. I thank you for watching this video and have a good day.